Hi everybody and welcome back to CoderDave. Today is a special episode because as I promised you, I will take you into events, but of course, as you all know, there's no in-person events yet. But I thought I should share with you the session I delivered during Microsoft Build 2020 a few months ago. The session was live recorded and I talk about productivity tips for remote developers. Basically, how can we be more productive while working from home or from any remote environment? Before we jump into that, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. Just click on the subscribe button below and turn on the notifications so you will not miss any new video I will post here. And let me know in the comment section below what you think about my tips and my presentation, and if you have any other tips and tricks that you can share with us for remote productivity. Right, let's go with the presentation. Hi everyone, thanks Bess, thanks CJ. My name is Davide, I'm the DevOps architect in Microsoft, and you probably have seen me around many different conferences in Hong Kong, but you can also reach out to me with the links that you find in the slide. And as our amazing host said today, if I can move the slides, I will walk you through some productivity tips, but before that, let's start with some challenges that I've seen happening and I'm experiencing as a remote developer. First of all, a very common one is that it's really easy to feel disconnected. Not talking with the people, not talking with your teammates, it's impactful. And for the same reason, also the collaboration is harder because you cannot go to your office mate and ask for advice or work together with them. Another common problem is that the perception that you're working too much or that maybe you're not working enough when you're working remotely. And this also relates to how I prioritize my work. How can I schedule efficiently my work? And last but not least, and I've seen this many times, maybe at your office, you have a super powerful PC or workstation that you work on, but then you're forced to work somewhere else. And maybe you just have an old laptop or a not so powerful machine. And how can I address that? What I will not cover in this session is like related to bad health habits or proximity to the fridge that I really suffer when I work from home. And I'm not talking about other kind of distraction like streaming, etc. So how can we fix these kind of, let's say, problems? How can we be happier when we are remote developers? So tip number one, it addressed like the disconnection thing, and it's try to keep communicating. We have a lot of software, a lot of tools that we can use, like they do chat and video, like Teams, for example, and try to communicate as much as possible. That doesn't mean that you have to communicate all the time, but try to keep on the conversation with your teammates. Maybe work together with them in a video call and just share ideas, share content, and try to clarify anything that could be a misunderstanding. When you talk in person, it's much easier to get what you're trying to say because there's also the body language and everything like that. But if you're doing it on a call and especially on a kind of a chat, that can lead to misunderstandings. So try to be more clear in what you're trying to say and achieve. And try to include social breaks in your schedule, like if you would do in your office. Maybe you could go 5 minutes having a coffee with some teammates. Try to do that as well when you work remotely. Maybe schedule 2 or 3 times during the day just for coffee and a quick chat. And let's say you're working in different time zones. Of course, this is a little bit more challenging, but there should not be a big problem in there as well. Because again, we have a lot of tools that allows us to communicate asynchronously, like Teams again, or even like GitHub discussions. If you've seen the announcement that is coming soon, and it's basically designed, as the name said, for having discussion with your team and your collaborators. And of course, we can use email, but do we really need to do that? I mean, email is, in my opinion, very overused and misused. So I would rather keep communicating even asynchronously using other tools like, again, Teams or other tools like discussions. All right, tip number 2, collaboration is harder. How can I make it easier? Well, the very first thing I would say is try to define and, of course, follow the processes you define. The one we have on the screen here is called GitHub Flow. Is just one of the kind of processes that you can embrace for collaborating and for coding in this case. It kind of forces you to go through a series of steps that you can define, and of course, as I said, you need to follow. But there are many other processes that you can implement or you can tune to your reality. But the advice here would be try to implement processes and try to make everyone, including yourself, following those processes, and you'll see that collaboration will become a little bit easier. And still talking about coding, another very good tip, in my opinion, is try to do code reviews. Code reviews are, a must-have for pull requests. But even if you're not doing pull requests, and by the way, you should, it's a really good tool to collaborate, because not only they help in the long run for having a higher quality code base, but it's a very good tool, for example, for new developers or new addition to the team to learn the code base and to learn to collaborate with other maybe more experienced developers. And of course, it allows you to mitigate security risks because you want to review and make sure that there's no bugs or security problems in there. Doing code review is not always easy. And so I thought I could share a couple of tips here for how to do better code reviews. The first one would be try to have a shared checklist for the code review. And the checklist should contain what you normally see happening in your code. If you can identify some behavior that your developers or yourself have when you're writing your code, then you can include that in your checklist. And you want to be sure that it's shared across the team, because so everyone can follow the same steps and the same processes for having the code review. And the second one is using, as we see in the image on the screen, some inline discussion or comments capability of the tools you're using for asking for clarification about maybe some bits of code, or to ask for some change requests. So it's really easy to understand what you're talking about and which piece of code you want to change or to have clarification about. And the third and last one, but probably the most important one, is try to foster a positive culture around code reviews. It's really easy, especially when you work remotely, to try to identify problems and then having some blame to the developer that kind of wrote that part. This is something that shouldn't happen. We really need to pay attention to that. But instead, I would rather say, have constructive feedback for that developer. Maybe he thought that that's the right way to write that code, and maybe there's another way that is not confident about, and try to grow together and try again to collaborate on that. Tip number 4, still in the collaboration, try to do co-coding or pair programming. This is super useful for learning, for debugging, for solving problems together. But how can we effectively do it remotely? Because if we are in the same office, I can go to my teammate and do that together. But what if we are remote? Well, we have an amazing tool here, which is LiveShare, that helps us doing that. And LiveShare, I'm sure you've seen it already through these years build. And it's available in Visual Studio, is available in VS Code, and is available even in the browser. So just add some of your friends, some of your colleagues, try to work with them together on your code, and you will have the same experience, whatever stack you're using or you're programming into. And this is a really cool way and very effective to do pair programming, even if you're remote. Tip number 5. It's about time management. As I said before, sometimes you have a feeling, or it's even real, that you're overworking or working not enough when you're working remotely. So try to manage that. Try to, for example, implement some time boxing. One example is maybe you want to work for 1 hour, and then you have a timer, and after the hour you take maybe 5 minutes break. Similarly to what the Pomodoro technique, prescribes. And this helps you keeping yourself focused on the project, helps you having a better idea of how the time is passing and what you're achieving. Another tip here would be to try to check your email, chat, and notification at intervals and not continuously. I know before I said try to communicate as much as possible, but try to do it smartly. If you keep interrupting yourself with notification, with emails, with chat, then you basically can't get anything done, and you need to keep refocusing on what you were doing. Last but not least, try to monitor your time if you want. There are a bunch of specific tools out there. The one you can see here on the screen is called Waka Time, and it's free, but there's other tools that are also free. And what those tools allow you to do is to install some extensions in your IDEs and other tools. And so you can monitor how much time you spend on some specific projects, or even like in this case, in some specific languages and tools. So that's a good way to keep yourself, informed on how you're working and what you're working on, and try for you to manage better your time. Talking about the similar thing and how you should organize your work. Again, we have a bunch of tools here, but try to use tools that are specifically done for organizing and prioritizing your and your team activities and work. Like Azure boards, for example, or if you use GitHub, the GitHub project boards that you see in the background. But using them is just the start. Try to use them properly. And for using them properly, what I mean is try to put your highest priority task and items on top. And so everyone knows that if they access the board and they need to, grab a task to work on, they will pick up the one on top because they are the higher priority ones. Also try to assign owners, or even assign it to yourself if you want to work on something, because again, in that case, this is the next thing I will do, or your teammates will do. And of course, keep them updated. Move the cards, move the statuses. Try to update your team and even yourself, because maybe this is a reminder for your next day on where the work is and what's the status. And even more on organization, try to categorize the work items and the tasks using either the tags or the labels to make it even easier for everyone to grab the work, or for yourself to understand what that was about. And this brings me to my last tip, which is related to, my home computer is low, how can I work? Well, try to use cloud-hosted environments. Now, we could do a few things in here. First one would be you can use some VMs in Azure. We have, in the marketplace, some images with Visual Studio, with the data science tools, and many other tools that you may use for development. However, that feels so 2000, right? It feels so boring. We have something much better. And again, you probably have seen these throughout the conference, and we have the Codespaces. We have Visual Studio Codespaces, which is the one I will demo in a second. And we have GitHub Codespaces, which basically with one click of a button allows you to have a complete development environment in a browser, completely in the cloud, that accessible from anywhere and any connected device. I've seen that used even in iPad. I would not use that in smartphones because the screen is just too small, but you're free to do so if you like. But most importantly, they are super powerful and super customizable. You can have a lot of personalization and customizations that you can apply today. I have a link here on a quick video on how to use it, and since the slides will be shared, I'll leave that to you. But I want to show you in action this part. So this is the Visual Studio Codespaces. This is the online visualstudio.com. You just go there, you log in, you create your Codespaces, as you can see up here. These links to your Azure subscriptions, and you can personalize and customize. In my case, it's a Linux VM or Linux environment with 2 cores and 4 GB of RAM. And what I can do here is basically everything and anything I will do on my laptop or on my computer, but leveraging the power of the cloud. In this case, if you see, it looks exactly like VS Code, and I have a Node.js application that I want to debug, and I just want to change this and maybe just add from Hong Kong. Oops. If I can write properly. And then I want to debug that. And how I can do that? Well, I just go here, run and debug, and boom, that starts. If you look up here, you see that this is actually a localhost address, but I'm actually working in the cloud in the browser. So the way it works is, if I click in here, basically Codespaces is able to do a mapping between my localhost environment and an address and its own address in the cloud. And boom, I have here my application. It's a very simple application, but it gives you an idea of what is possible. And this is a Node.js application, but you can do it with ASP.NET. We can do it with basically any other language and framework you have. So last thing, if you go here, you have the live share that I was talking about. So you can collaborate even with that tool with anyone else that has VS Code, that has Visual Studio, any version, or that use Codespaces or the browser experience. And with this, I completed my presentation. Thank you for following it. And if you have any question, I'm here.